Hello and welcome back to the Mumbles and Things YouTube channel. I am continuing this series where I answer your questions. I said this before, but in 2020, January, I sent out a survey to I think it's to the Facebook group about what people wanted to know more about. And then I totally forgot about it. And I just found the responses and I was like, I should probably respond to these questions. So I'm just going through the list of questions and seeing seeing, answering the questions as they come up on the list and seeing what comes out of it. So hopefully you're enjoying this series, and if you are and you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to this channel and click the little bell so that you're notified when I put up new videos, and give this video a thumbs up so that I know that you like it. So I'll pick up where we left off. The one I was going to get into at the end of the last one, but it just seemed a little too long. That's where we'll start, and it was the best way to get over having to be perfect in regards to creating and organizing my grimoire or book of shadows. So first thing I want to say is, I think people get confused between grimoire and book of shadows. I don't think that this person is, but I just wanted to clarify it while we're here talking about it. So the way I understand it is a book of shadows, which is a term that came out of the Wiccan religion with Gerald Gardner. The Book of Shadows is like a very private, secret, personal book that you keep with your own thoughts and your own journaling and automatic writing and all of that kind of thing, and it's like so private. And then the grimoire is more like a reference book where you would record, this is how you use cinnamon in a spell, or this is a spell that I did and it did this. So that's the way that I see the difference between them. Just so that we're kind of on the same page, at least while I answer this question, keep those two definitions in mind. And actually, I don't know that it even matters to answer this question, but we'll see. So this person is wanting to know how to get over being perfect. And I do think that this is a common problem that people have and a common question, because I got this question so many times when I was making the Organizing Your Grimoire e-course for Mumbles Academy. That was like the top thing that the members wanted to know, was like, how do I not worry about my perfectionism and just like write things down? And I get that, because a lot of times we'll get like a beautiful journal or something and we don't want to mess it up with a mistake or anything like that. And so the answer I want to give is like, just don't worry about it. But that's so wrong, because that's not even how I am. Like, I definitely am a perfectionist and I worry about it too. So I think one thing to do is to start by having like a 3-ring notebook. I don't have mine. Mine is I have a 3-ring notebook, or not a 3-ring, spiral bound notebook, and I have one, but it's in my dining room, so I'm just gonna not get it right now. But have that for while you're taking notes, and just like don't worry about your handwriting or your spelling or anything while you're writing in your spiral notebook. And then use that as like a rough draft. And when you decide that something is something you want forever and you want to keep it because it's something that was a really good spell and you tried it, you liked it, or it's something that you've used a lot, like a meditation or something that you want to remember, or a use for a crystal, or a meaning of a tarot card or a rune, or any of that kind of stuff, when you decide that it's something that you want to keep, you transfer it from your messy chicken scratch spiral bound notebook into your pretty beautiful journal that you got. And then, or however you're making your grimoire. So that's one way, is to have a rough draft and then to have like the final copy. Another thing to think about is to have a 3-ring binder as your grimoire instead of having a journal that's like bound, because then you can change the pages around, you can take pages out, and especially if you use those clear sheet protectors, you can print out pages, you can rip out a page from your spiral binder and put it in there, and then you can move pages around based on how things should be organized for you. That makes the most sense. So that's another way, is that's like less permanent, it seems, and it's easier to not feel like a perfectionist when it's not permanent. But I also want to address this idea of perfectionism, because I think the reason that we feel like we need to be perfect. And this is at least a personal experience. I don't know if this is how the person who asked that feels, but I feel like perfectionism for me comes from this need to control things, especially things that I actually can't control. We're actually always talking about this in Mumbles Academy when we meet, is just like, it always seems like there's this perfectionism that at least one person is struggling with. It's always easier to give advice than to like listen to your own advice, but I always say to them, perfectionism is like a rock in the middle of a stream, and it blocks the flow of the water, and it makes it so the water can't flow the way it wants to go. It has to like divert itself and go around, and it makes it more challenging. And so if we remove that boulder, then the water flows more smoothly, and the in this analogy, the water is your energy and the energy of the universe or whatever you believe in. If we remove that perfectionism, things just move more smoothly. The problem is, how do we remove the perfectionism? And so I think those things that I said before about giving yourself an alternative, giving yourself the opportunity to be messy first, and then making it more beautiful in the second draft. That's one way to do it. And then another idea is to, well, I think trying to figure out the root of why you feel like it needs to be perfect. I know we see like on Instagram and on Pinterest and all these internet places, there's people who are so artistic and they create these beautiful things. And the people who are doing that are people who are good at art, and that's the kind of way that they express themselves. But not everyone has that skill or that patience to like do it that beautifully. And so I think that might be part of it, is like comparing ourselves to other people, when the purpose of the grimoire is to compare yourself to yourself, to see how you've grown and changed over the years. So if you are holding yourself back from recording that because you're worried that it's not perfect, then you're kind of saying that your journey isn't worth anything until it's perfect. And so what you might actually find is that by just like giving it a go and not worrying about it being perfect, is you actually start to see how you've changed, and you'll get better at it because you're practicing. You'll practice writing. If you start like drawing pictures and things as well, all of that practice is going to improve over time. And so you'll be able to see that journey as well, the improvements that you've made in your ability to record your practice, which is really cool as well. So I think it's a matter of just like taking the leap and just like trying it out, just starting to write, because again, the reason that you want to keep a grimoire, and the reason or a book of shadows, whichever one you want to call it, is so that you can see how you've changed. And the earlier that you start doing that, the more you'll be able to see. And it's so fun for me. I mean, I took a long time to start writing things down, and my first version of my grimoire is digital, which was one. Actually, that's another way that you can overcome that perfectionism, is when it's digital, it really is completely changeable. You don't have to worry about anything, because you can just like delete and rewrite. So I tried not to do that because I did want to see how I've changed over the years. But it's really fun for me to go back and see like the earliest writings that I did and the things that I was learning about. And especially like if you go back to my Tumblr of Mumbles and things, you can see how just like chaotic things were, and how now I've really discovered, what I believe in and what I want to share with people and how I see the world. Whereas when I first started, it was like a conglomeration of everything I was learning about all at once, and it was very eclectic and chaotic. So it's still fun for me, though, to be able to see that and to see the changes. You can see them in my blog posts, too. So if you are recording your grimoire and you get over that hurdle of it needing to be perfect, then you can go back and see those changes for yourself as well. And I think it's a really valuable thing to have as a record of your practice. So I hope that helps. So this person is asking, what do you do to connect better with either plants or tarot? So those are two very different questions, and I'll answer each of them individually. The first thing, we'll talk about how to connect with plants. And there's so many ways to connect with plants. I think people think of them as like inanimate objects, but people who spend a lot of time with plants realize how alive they are. So one thing to do if you want to connect with plants is to spend time with them. To surround yourself with plants. You can't see it now because what I have as the background is none of my plants, but the rest of my house is full of plants. And one of my favorite things to do is go around and look at each plant. Pretty much every day I do this, and see if they have any new leaves. And I say hello if they have a new leaf. Go around and check the soil, check to see if they need anything, like if their leaves are getting yellow or if they're discoloration or if there's bugs or anything like that. Checking their needs. So spending time with them and making sure that they're doing okay. And then also talking to them. Like I said, I say hello when a new leaf comes out and I welcome it into the home. And so talking to the plants, telling them that you hope that they grow and that you're so excited to see how they what they look like when they're bigger and all of that kind of stuff, and just telling them stories. So those are a couple ways to connect with plants. And then one thing I really like to do, especially with wild plants rather than the house plants, going into a natural area and sitting finding a nice place to sit. And then I really like to draw find a specific plant. I sit for a little while, look around in the area and see if there's any plants that are kind of calling to me. And then I zero in on that plant and I draw it. Sometimes I'll write about it if I don't feel like drawing. Sometimes I do a little bit of both. I kind of think it's like you're getting to know a person, asking questions of the plant, telling a story of how the plant got there. If it's an older plant like a tree, there's a lot of history there, so there's a long story that you can tell of all the people that have walked by that tree, all the people it's seen, all the animals that have made its home in the tree's branches. And obviously a lot of this is just like headcanon, but some of it might be coming to you from that plant. It depends on what you believe in, but some of it could be that the plant is talking to you and telling you its story and you're just recording it. So there's another way to talk to plants or to feel more close to plants. And then I think eating plants is another way, which kind of sounds morbid after thinking about them like talking to us and then turning around and saying, now we're going to eat them. But I think it's part of it. We eat plants. That's a really interesting way to connect with plants too, is through taste and how they taste. So I talked about this in a previous video about connecting with your intuition and being really present with your senses, being really aware of how things taste, being aware of how things sound, all of your senses. And I think that's really important when it comes to connecting with plants as well, is just being aware, like we talked about, being aware of how they look through drawing. If you tell a story, you might be listening to the plant. You also might hear the way that the leaves sound when it rustles, or any other sound that they might have when you pour water into the soil and it makes that sort of like crackling sound, or any of those things. The way it smells, a lot of plants are very aromatic. That's why we have like essential oils and incense, because of the smell that these plants have. And the way it tastes is a common one because we do eat plants. The way they feel. Some plants have soft leaves with little hairs on them. They're like a fur. Some leaves are really rough. Some leaves will sting you if you touch them and it hurts. Some leaves make you feel itchy. So some are sharp. Some are smooth. So paying attention to how they feel. Using all of your senses to experience a plant is another way to connect with them. So I think those are some good ways to get started. I'm sure there's more things that you can do, but those are good places to start. Just a note, some plants are poisonous, so make sure that you don't eat things that are poisonous. So now let's answer it. It's like sort of a two-part question. What do you do to connect better with the tarot? And this one is really fun for me as well because I love the tarot. So the first thing to do, if you've never used tarot before, the first thing to do is just look at every single card. The first deck that I had, I didn't do this step, and it was like way too long. It might have even been a year. And suddenly this card, I think it was the Five of Swords, came up. And I was like, what is this card? I've never seen this before. And so I think that's an important part, is to just make sure you've seen every card and you're kind of familiar with all of the different images, regardless of which deck you're using, making sure you've seen every card in your deck. And then another thing to do after you've looked at each individual card is to sort of make a matrix. I like to separate the cards into the major arcana, the numbered minor arcana, and the court minor arcana, and making a matrix with those. So with the major arcana, laying them out in order from 0 to 21, from Fool to World. Sometimes I'll even put them in a circle when I've gotten a new deck, because I feel like the circle repeats. I may even do like a spiral with the Fool at the center and then the Wheel of Fortune at the top. And then if I can, I'll get the World all the way around at the top again. Because I feel like the Wheel of Fortune is sort of like a chance to restart at the Fool and go around again, or a chance to start the next cycle and go through the world. So, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but looking at the major arcana and seeing the story that evolves through in order. And then when you look at the numbered cards, laying them out in the suits going down and then the numbers going across, you can sort of compare and contrast each number, and that will give you an idea of the themes of those numbers and how it changes based on the suit that they're in. So there's a course in Mumbles Academy. It's a tarot meanings like challenge or something like that. I can't remember what I named it. But we go through each numbered card and each court card as well, and look at them in the number as a group, and then we go through each individual card within that number and how they're similar and different. So we have a theme, and then like how each suit flavors that theme. So I think, doing that for yourself is really helpful as well, coming up with your own interpretation of those groupings, and then doing the same thing with the court cards. So having the suits and then the 4 courts, the page, the knight, the queen, and the king, and seeing how they're similar and how they're different. So those are kind of like practical ways to connect with the tarot. And then I think the next thing to do is to just start drawing cards daily, doing a daily card draw or doing a 3-card spread each day and just seeing what comes up. Trying to read those cards and learn about them and what messages they have, and not just having it for that day, for that single card, but seeing how that card actually shows up in your day, reflecting on it at the end of the day. So drawing it in the morning and then coming back to it at the end of the day and seeing, what you had thought it was telling you, and then how it appeared throughout the day. I think that's a good place to start. So I'm just going to leave it there. There's so much more that you can do, obviously, with the tarot, but I think those are good places to get started. I think we'll just do one more for this video because it is getting to that point. Those were pretty in-depth questions, so we didn't get through as many in this video, but that's okay because sometimes those are fun. This one is kind of subjective, I guess. It says, how to be a better witch/healer. The word better is what's tripping me up because I'm not sure what that means. What does it mean to be a better witch? For me, being a better witch is just being a better person, how to be a better person. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach this question. So one book that this is bringing to mind is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. One of the 4 agreements is to always do your best. I think it's the 4th agreement. If you are unfamiliar with this book, it's basically 4 agreements that you can make with yourself that will help you. Just help you, basically. In the beginning, it talks about agreements that humans have made and how some of them are not that great agreements, and we can change what beliefs we have. Basically, that's what an agreement is a belief. Sort of. It's a little bit different, but anyway, so you make an agreement with yourself to do these 4 things, and it really changes the way that you view the world. Maybe someday we'll talk about the other 3, but right now we're just going to talk about the 4th one, which is to always do your best. And when I first read that, sometimes you see these graphics and they don't really go into detail about what they're talking about. They just kind of say the phrase. And I was just like, I don't know, maybe I have a problem with superlatives, but better, best. It's hard for me to quantify that because you can only do what you can do. And that's really actually what the fourth agreement is about, is doing your best. And your best is going to change from day to day. It could change from hour to hour. So being a better witch, I think the way that you're a better witch is by just doing your best, whatever that means in the moment. Doing the best you can. When I first started practicing witchcraft, I did not know that I had ADHD, and I put a lot more pressure on myself, and I beat myself up a lot more because I felt like I wasn't living up to like what other people were able to do. And that is actually really what's flavored my way of practicing, where I incorporate a lot of magic into the things that I'm already doing, because I struggle with executive dysfunction and I have a hard time doing something, getting up and actually doing something, no matter how much I want to. Sometimes I'll be sitting, distracted by something, totally absorbed, and I'll have the thought in my head, you should go and do this thing. You should go do that ritual. You should go cast that spell. You should go do the dishes. All the different things that I might have to do. My executive function will not function properly in order to actually go do the thing. And it used to make me mad at myself. It used to make me sad that I'd miss the full moon, or I'd miss a Samhain, or any of the things that other people just did really easily. Before I even knew that I had ADHD and this was part of the problem and this was part of why that was happening to me, I started just thinking, well, hey, I didn't do that, but I did this other thing. Or, well, what if instead of like making a big deal out of it and putting a lot of pressure on myself, I just incorporate that into something I'm already doing? And so that's kind of how that way of practicing evolved for me. And I don't think I'm the first person who's done it, but it's just the way that I do things. So for me, that is doing my best at all times. Is sometimes it's exactly what I want it to look like. Sometimes I cut the lavender in when it's still in bloom and I bundle it and it dries and I have beautiful lavender bundles that I can burn for cleansing or for a ritual. Sometimes the lavender dies before I can cut it. I mean, not the whole plant, but like the flowers decay before I can cut them and I can't use them. And that makes me sad, but that wasn't my best that day. So I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that how to be a better witch is to not be hard on yourself, to not compare yourself to other people and what they're doing, to compare yourself to yourself, but not be hard on yourself if your best one day is not the same as your best the next day. If your best is not as good as the previous best, because that's your best. That's what you can manage. So I think that's a good place to leave this video. Thank you so much for watching my video and for being here. I hope that you enjoy this series and have these questions answered. I hope I'm answering some of your questions as well if you're not the people who ask these questions. If you do have a question, if you're watching this and you're thinking, I sure wish I could have my question answered, then you can find the survey that I sent out linked below. You can submit your questions and I will answer them when I get to them. We've done about 30 questions so far. Maybe not that many. I think we've done about, I don't know, it doesn't matter. We've done some amount of questions and we will continue doing this until there are no more questions. Right now I think there's 250. So we'll get there. And you can always add yours to the list and I'll answer that as well if I can. So thank you again for being here. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up and I will see you in the next video.